1 minute to 9. I'm just going to stretch out my welcome and start us up. Josh, can you please open this meeting with a karakia for us, and then I'll say something. Thank you.
Morena te whānau, ni noi tātou. E o ngā manu, a tēnei te whakamunga tutu ki a koe mō tēnei hui ngā mātou, ara hena mai ki au ki te tika ki te pungia mātou, tuku mai te wairua tapu hei manaki, he awhi e te aki ki a mātou. Anei mātou tūku nea mui toaruaru, ka tuku I tēnei ngoi rungu I te mūtu mātou kai whakori. Raiti, Amen.
Amen. Thank you for that. I've got an apology from Councillor Akuhaka Brown. Can someone move that?
Yes.
Moved by Councillor Badet, seconded by myself. All in favour? Contrary, carried. Any declarations of interest? Nothing. Okay, councillors, let's move to page 3 where we take a look at our minutes, which Councillor Wharehinga chaired because I was sick. Any questions or queries? Councillor Seymour. Moved by Councillor Seymour, seconded by Councillor Foster. Any discussion around the minutes? Nothing. All in favour? Contrary? Carried. Okay, we move to the action sheet. And Ben, if you can just give us a quick update on the one action on the action sheet.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
On page
Councillor
8.
Foster can't second those minutes because it wasn't there. So I'll second them.
Seconded by Councillor Wharehinga Coral. Thank you. All good. If you can just give us a quick verbal update on that one action.
Kia ora. The action item has been undertaken as part of the group plan review. We've also, there's aspects of that that are part of current work in progress within the work stream that I've developed for the plan this year also.
Thank you. Okay, councillors, we then move to, let me just get my agenda open. No leave of absence, the governance work planner, acknowledgement and tribute. Today we just want to acknowledge our dear friend Kelly, whose funeral will be later, and also acknowledge his whānau, Pastor Norm McLeod, as his dad. And just from all of us here at the GDC, he was a friend of many of ours, and he fought a brave battle, but he's now resting in peace. So just our thoughts to the McLeod family, his wife Bronnie and his 5 kids. Okay, no public input or deputations today, no extraordinary business, no notice of business or adjourned. Okay, Mr. Green, Ben, and welcome Andrew. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to hand over to you and you will guide us through your report, and then once you've given us an overview, I'll open the floor for councillors to ask questions. You can just leave your microphone on.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll take it as the report has been tabled as read. I'll go through and just summarise the key points as I've detailed on my first inaugural report coming into the role as City Manager. I've made really the key focus and the reference to what 2020 has been. I'm sure that's not lost on all of us here. The COVID focus, and quite rightly so, has been a national and regional sort of in terms of response and the ongoing aspect of COVID as we are today. The key aspect, particularly for CDM, and I think this morning was a good segue into really, we've got a wider risk matrix, particularly with the natural and man-made hazards. So the tsunami alert, or the event that was triggered this morning at 2:30, and then obviously into the CDM network was really, I think, where for the team and certainly for the remit we have within the role at council here, is to get all of our hazard and risk matrices really reviewed, and in terms of really how well prepared we are for these. So that is quite a key critical piece of work that's actually in place now. And obviously that leads into the group plan that's going for the risk review and analysis as part of the work stream this year. I acknowledge my the colleagues that were enrolled here, Phil Nicholson and Wirumi Tamati, the work particularly that's been undertaken since both of those gentlemen have been in seat here, which really for me has provided a good platform in terms of where really I can provide that additional layer in terms of where we can actually enhance, I think, the very good base we have. The reports, and as we move on to the third point here, really in terms of reviewing the previous reports for this forum, taking account 2020, where it really has been a very heavy focus on the COVID and very diarised chronological reporting. We've really gone back to focus on is really the reporting against the group plan. And I think those objectives, particularly for this forum, where the ownership nests really in terms of the group plan is quite a key thing that really is our remit for CDM. So really for me, that's the accountability I have in terms of those objectives and how we actually performing against those. What I've really taken is the existing report against the first level, which goes back to the time frame, as you see, notice there with the April 2019. The update I've provided really gives us a picture in terms of where things have moved to. And, you know, for the most part, there's been progress. There certainly has been really the park on some of the progress based on certainly the first 4 months of last year being a focus on COVID only. So my intention, as I've indicated there, will be to take this report, look at really the format and the way that the data is presented, or certainly the progress is presented as a balanced scorecard approach to bring into the next forum. And that really brings us back in line in terms of our remit, working against that group plan there. Also, obviously, keeping that COVID theme, there was the engagement of Richard Mole, who was the external contractor brought in or consultant to review the COVID response, and that cold debrief is attached as an annex, and I'm sure that you see that there certainly are some quite a few high points there in terms of the way that response played out. Currently, obviously, where we are today is around what does resurgence planning look like, given where we sort of had the advent of preparation for rhythm and vines, and equally the recent case of community transmission in Northland. I'm pleased to say that we do have a plan that is a living document in that sense, given the nature of the virus is quite adaptive in terms of the science and epidemiology, which really means in terms of response and how we adapt to that, it is a health-led response. Our challenge is really keeping our systems and processes there to complement really our health colleagues in that sense. I have been in recent contact with health just along that matter to really look at the regional collaborative and collective response that we need to sort of be working on our level that really reflects the conversations we're having at the national level led with NEMA. Point 7 really is, I'll just touch on the review of the group plan, which is due to start this year. So we've convened our initial 2 scoping meetings for that activity. Hence, my colleague Andrew from National Office being here really is a stakeholder input into really how we define and develop the project plan going forward. The next item really, the Napier flood. We had 2 of the team deployed down to the Napier role, both in the ECC capacity for the welfare and intelligence functions that they held. Look, I acknowledge the performance of those 2 gentlemen that deployed down there. They were, for the most part, coming new, or one of them was into a welfare function they hadn't done as a role. That really saw him in charge of really setting up the welfare centre as the lead for that, and equally for his colleague Kupu, who was running the intelligence function for that ECC. I'd acknowledge really, I think that's really, we've got a couple of our team that performed very well in that response, and you know, it's really bodes well for us in terms of what we're obviously doing with our own internal preparation, in terms of getting our ECC structure and the right people aligned in that training that needs to complement that as well. Just move on to the next point with the NEMA Resilience Fund applications and an update there. The very first, there were 2 projects we've tendered for, we submitted our request for. The first one was via Dr. Murray Cave, the resilience for rain events. We've had to park that just based on the requirement from NEMA that the time frame for that has been compressed to have delivery. I think it was from May, June. And equally, really, what Dr. Murray was unable to do is really to queue that amount of resource and the work stream to do that. So we're looking to retain that, defer that into the next funding round, and keep that submission alive. I mean, that has a focus on climate change, which no doubt is really quite a key consideration for what we bring back into the group plan review and that risk analysis this year. So it's actually, may not be part of the funding that we'll get for where we are now, but climate change, I can assure you, is really quite a key insert for the considerations for our risk and hazard reviews this year. The second, the Tsunami Taumaru is really a joint project we're working with the CDM Group in Hawke's Bay. Now that's based on the work that Hawke's Bay has been doing primarily around the Po markets in terms of tsunami evacuation. And the detail for that, I'd have to say I was very fortunate to have been made aware that just before the submissions closed, so I managed to obviously quickly get that submission altered to be a joint submission with our region also. The ESCC, for the most part, that's BAU in terms of the connect there. Really, I think for the ECC group as a collective, our primary focus for heading into the end of last year has been with a focus on rhythm and vines, and obviously what's the contingency planning for a COVID response there. That's obviously ongoing, and I'd say that that really is just the natural rhythm of what and how that group really rolls. The community link framework, I've identified that we have the framework. We're very fortunate to have community link. I think that should be stated here. There's other regions that are looking to replicate that structure. We're in the, I guess, enviable position of being able to, how can we make that structure sort of better purposed and actually enhanced? And we'd certainly recognise we have gaps in the rural area, but I currently have discussions underway with someone looking to deal with Tamanihuri in that regard, looking at an appointment for that seat, for the area coordinator seat. Tangata Whenua, engagement. There's an aspect, I think if we all reflect on really what our makeup for the community we're in here, we're a very high population. We're not trying to go out and sort of game the fact that we have iwi engagement. It's really how do we formalise what I think are already very well formed existing arrangements. And formalising in the sense that we have a focus, particularly for the strategy for the council at all levels, and I'd say even all of government, is really that there is a formal relationship that exists that complements the streams we already have in terms of those relationships there. So I've really put forward a focus, and I've coined it as an iwi link, which is really looking at the collaboration within our community link regional setups and how we actually can incorporate within those, in essence, regional committees led by our community link area coordinators, where marae committees or representatives, and equally we have an input or awareness in terms of what's going on there. Now we've started those as a high level discussion, but as a work stream, I'd like to be able to report progress against the implementation of iwi link, and at the strategic level, really how we're dealing within the iwi collectives for the same. The other aspect I've mentioned is the funding, particularly there's different funding streams, and the challenges where there's a number of independent bodies that are looking with a very well-intended aspect of bringing resource into the region. Dealing with marae, now sometimes that bypasses CDM, and that's fine because their remit is not always to come through us. However, what I've managed to do is not so much intercept, but really tag on to the fact that people have a desire for intent and looking to really fund aspects of civil defence planning, is to really take that into the collective of what we're doing, because that provides us the ability to enhance what we currently have in terms of infrastructure and setup. It allows them the vehicle where we've actually got that shared ownership and equally the shared approach to really how we deliver and manage this the aspects of civil defence. So that, I'll make reference to the Kāinga program that Te Puni Kōkiri has, which is a nationwide initiative for that. And I've already initiated discussions with Te Puni Kōkiri and equally on the some of the other partner agencies we have, Red Cross, for example, that are looking to bring them in as a joint funding submission in terms of how we can actually access those funds. So I'd like to think, it's a good news story for our region as a result of engaging in that forum. Community engagement, so I'll move on to the points I've mentioned there. Obviously quite a key part in terms of make reference to the culture of resilience. And from that I've drawn on the lessons and the feedback from the Japanese earthquake in terms of what really worked and the aspects that are highlighted within the various literature that's put out on the back of that disaster there. Our approach really, which I've given the remit for our team, is to focus on actually deliberate engagement. So that moves from being a very ad hoc, receiving the ad hoc request to go and engage. I've mapped that out with who we're going to engage with, putting into place a time frame and resourcing for that. We'll make note of the previous reports or requests around what does that look like and what's happening in that space. So next Tuesday, I'll have the Mayor opening our session we're running here in Chambers, which is the Tairāwhiti Schools Collective. We've invited all principals to be here, present in Chambers, and I have a external speaker coming in as part of our delivery for that, which is around the emergency planning and awareness. Now, it's quite key really, and this is where we tap into the resources, particularly from the likes of our national body with NEMA and partner agencies, is that provides really the forum to get a collective shared response in terms of what the hazards are that many are facing on the school side. Equally, the other aspect there is we've got resourcing that is an educational resource which is actually residual to the meeting. So I think that's a great opportunity in terms of it's not just a meeting for the principals, for those that want to engage in terms of what that provides for. It's an excellent opportunity. We've got an educational insert, and of course our kids are great ambassadors in terms of really where the household doesn't get left alone until the kids are happy that things have been done. And don't drop that plastic bag, that's not good sort of thing. So that's quite a key event for us. It actually will signal the approach we'll be taking this year. We have vulnerable groups within this community. I'll be looking to engage with them as collectives. In early childhood centres, aged care facilities, it's really getting people with very much a shared problem to be coming to the one place where we're not going to fix everything for them, but we can give them access to the toolbox, review what they have in terms of plans, and actually have them networking and collaborating on that basis as well. It's a pretty good response so far, and I was sort of wringing my hands a wee bit on Tuesday because the invite hadn't gone out, but pleased to say that there has been responses there, and it will be sort of hopefully a well-attended forum for that.
And I like the fact that people can zoom in because some of our communities live 2-3 hours away. So for a teacher or someone who's the headmaster from a small school who might be very interested, it's great that opportunity is there to still take part, but don't have to travel and take half the day to get here at the 10th and of that.
Yes, and for the principals in this round, it's primary, secondary, kura kaupapa, which has a primary and secondary, but is a specific, really group within the school's fraternity. And we've already had, as your worship made mention of, really the likes of Ngata College that will be coming by Zoom, and will be encouraging certainly the far-flung areas at the top of the coast for the same as well, or our inland schools. Really, the other aspect of community engagement, which we've actually just convened the initial meeting last week with Red Cross in Fire Emergency New Zealand, is to shift away from really civil defence being a singular meeting that's taking place in the community. And what I make reference to there is that unconsciously, as different organisations, we are all competing for the same audience. We really, for the most part, are dealing with the same group of people, and that contributes quite significantly to hui fatigue within the communities. I mean, we don't, until you actually sort of look at who's, even from council groups here, who's looking to engage within our communities for what purpose. And when you realise, well, crikey, they've got more than just saw the fences front of mine, there's roading, there's a number of different things taking place there. So the pilot, which I've really set up for and had the support of Red Cross and for FENS, we'll be to develop an emergency roadshow where we'll take a collective roadshow in terms of that approach to the community. Now those will be less, but certainly we'll be looking to promote those by channel media so that actually we get a call to action for that. It really goes into that do less and achieve more in terms of impact, and really I'm looking to get the initial time frame for that. I've had the positive response back from both FENS and Red Cross as recently as Tuesday, so that hopefully will be something I can report forward for our next meeting in terms of progress for that. Equally, for those of you in the wards, I'll extend the invite for those so that you're aware of what's going on in your regions, and equally would ask that you help or assist with getting that message out there in terms of that call to action as well. That's apart from really the next steps. I've put two things on the final points there, which really is around the group plan review, which is given of you're aware of what's that undertaking look like, or is about to commence, I should say. The other, which I'll make mention, particularly in light of today, if there was anything bigger than a tsunami event actually being triggered, of course, our key risk here is that we are, particularly with our inundation modelling, it really gives sort of credence or the requirement for us to get our front foot forward in terms of getting our ECC site identified and that project plan underway for this year.
Thanks a lot, Ben. Thank you for the thorough update. Before I open the floor to councillors, I did receive a text at 9:03 from Councillor Robinson to say he's unable to attend. Is the floor happy to add him to the apologies? So is it all right? We'll just add to the apologies we had. Okay. No objections? Thank you. Okay, Ben, let's open up the floor. So we've got page 70 to 43, which is a very thorough report and gives us a little bit of information, what happened here. And what I liked about your report a lot is talking about something and then the actions out of it. That's really proactive and learning from what we've done and what could work better or different. So thank you for that. I'll open the floor if there are any questions. Councillor Faulkner, remember to use your microphone.
Good morning, Ben. Thank you. Excellent report, and I agree the follow-up of actions within each category is fantastic. I guess my question almost is for Andrew, as much as anything around the actions on a national all-of-government approach, which allows for the likes of our MPI groups in an area like this with such a strong primary industry focus. What has come out of this in the way of learnings from central government for us?
In particular, talking about the COVID, talking about drought or wider?
Well, COVID is the catalyst for these learnings.
Yep.
So it's like anything. If it was tsunami, if it was flooding, you'll garner learnings from the likes of COVID that would flow over into other areas.
It's continually evolving, it's continually learning and actually implementing changes that come along. But good to say we've done a debrief as such for the whole thing because there's still a lot more to go. We haven't got there yet. But some of the things around some of the national with regards to the coordination in Wellington for the agencies. The other thing also is around COVID is a lot of work being done behind the scenes, which we're not seeing with regards to quarantines, those sort of things. So there is actually a lot of things to come out of it. It's a bit early to actually have those available right now, but there is a lot of work being done.
Do you have an idea of a time frame as to when we might see those?
I couldn't commit to it because we're still in the response to the COVID phase. So there has been a capture after the first lockdown there. I'm not sure what's happening with the outcomes from there. The team here, the team here involved in it. So no, I'm not sure if the time frame yet. Sorry, I don't think we can right now.
Councillor Dowsing.
Thank you. I was interested in a little bit more around the resilience fund itself and the applications that you that have been made to that. Just around the resilience fund, from what I could see, it's around about a $1 million contestable fund per year. Is that right? And it hasn't increased since its inception, basically. Is that the only external funding available to your team? Is there other funds that you apply to?
Within NEMA, Andrew can correct me if I'm wrong, that is the only fund I'm aware of. Obviously, I'm going for a bit of discovery here in terms of what's available. I made reference to where we've got the other agency aspects, and the Puni Kōkiri example is one there. And equally, what I'm really finding is that the NGOs are really committing funds that they'd like to spend as well. They're particularly of interest because rather than a piecemeal approach for them, much have indicated that collective going into the community. I think as a collective, jointly or collectively funding and putting forward submissions, there's far greater weight of really where we're going to get impact. And some of the things we're looking at, particularly around resilience and setting up, sort of fed centres up around our rural regions, for example. Really, if you're trying to do that with a $80,000 fund across the region, that's really, you're going to end up with pretty much what token sort of investment going on in terms of capital.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question. This is particularly in the tsunami project and the PO. We've only applied for around $20,000 for this region, and it includes researchers and artists to learn, design, and develop and install culturally relevant tsunami PO. $20,000 doesn't seem like a lot for the work involved there.
Yeah, look, in the disclaimer, it was intercepting that at the last minute. It's really where the benefit of really having your shared sort of contact with our colleagues on the left and right, so that's both Plenty and Napier. So that came through quite late, but it really was an opportunity. I mean, something's better than nothing in that sense. So I think really what it is, as we get ready for the next funding submission, and particularly this will be born out of when we're doing the group plan review. And working really, I mean, Andrew gave me a heads up at the end of last year around that this fund is available. I wouldn't say we were as prepared in terms of the work that we certainly will be for this coming round. But look, I've put our hat in the ring, and I'd like to think that that's going to be a start of what we can expand onto, because we tend to be very focused on the towns, but really, of course, our ward is the tyranny of distance is really a bigger issue for us than actually having what a population in Auckland deals with. You've got a congested but very small geographic area.
Yeah, no, and it's not any criticism on the amount sought or anything like that. I'm just, I know that we're, from the amounts being applied for and from the size of the fund contestable, it seems like you're another area that's potentially underfunded because of the limited access to funds you've got. And if you're contesting $1 million across the country and you're going with the piecemeal parts of projects at $20,000, it's going to be very hard to deliver without drawing funds from elsewhere in the business. So I think it's just saying that we need to keep in mind around our function here that we need to find other avenues for funding and keep an eye on the landscape.
I might just add to that, there are a lot of the funding grants that are available outside of the Resilience Fund for research based. So we have been able to seek contributions towards that. We have a couple of applications in the pipeline around some more hazard type research. So that tends to be where the external grant funding comes in to support civil defence activities in the strategic planning research area. And it is about, things that we can do with workshops and education that we can look at those other research type funds for. So this is one pot that's specifically targeted in pure civil defence, but there are others that we can draw on to support the activities. Yes, the difficulty is the pros and cons either way around Unitary is that we don't have the other councils or the TLAs that we can draw on to support our activities.
Councillor Foster and then Sheldrake.
Yeah, thank you. there's a lot of good initiatives that came out of this council over that COVID period, and one of them was actually contacting all over 65-year-olds personally. We all had certain numbers that we could ring every day over that period, and contacting all the different people. The response was absolutely fantastic. The people were so appreciative of it, and it actually identified people that were in need as well, and it could be put onto another different agency or a different sector to go and help them, whether it was for food or health or whatever. But that initiative, was that rolled out nationally, or is it something that the rest of the country could learn from us? Because I'm still getting feedback from people that got contacted, and it was a huge reflection of the council and what we do in this region. So I would,
So the initiative was a joint one with MSD, and it had been something that they looked at trialling in the Hawke's Bay. So fortunately for us, we had the number of people that could go around and call everyone. And the numbers were on our side as well relative to what they would have to call in the Hawke's Bay. So as I understand, it is unique to our area. And yeah, so just recognise that it was a joint initiative between ourselves and MSD. Councillor Sheldrake. And then Councillor Seymour.
Yeah, Larry is sort of, well, first of all, I've never seen so many acronyms in my life. ROSC. What's it stand for? ROSC.
Regional on-scene mandates for maritime.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just noticed the harbour master on that line. Yeah, so how that fit in.
Sorry, I can't see anyone.
Yeah. But the wider question was for me was more around that whole communication strategy. I mean, this is so articulated and written down, and it's hard to see any gap in the model. But are you confident, in particular for that old age group who are potentially more vulnerable, not Facebook orientated, stuff like that, that in the effect of a major event, we really would nail our response?
That's a good question. I mean, one of the aspects of coming into the role we identified what's so much a critical gap is really having the dedicated resource internally for our comms. Now, that's a two-way thing as well. You've got to have a comms plan to be able to resource. That, in terms of work stream, has actually been developed with our communications team, which we've taken through to the CE and Dave, is really in terms of we need to really look at how, even in the BAU sense of what the sort of key messaging is we need to get out there. So it's actually identifying what's relevant. We don't want to just be swamping social media or really how we're doing that. It's got to be very on point. How we get that cut through, because I mean, there's still people using landlines. So, there's social media in the digital sense isn't the be all and end all in terms of comms. And that's part of that strategy. We've got what are the channels we really need to leverage for that. And that's why the communications plan is so key.
Thank you. Councillor Seymour.
Thank you. There are still people with no cell phone access. There's still no cell phone access out of Matwai, which we've been asking for goodness knows how long, because it's such a significant area. So we can bring that up separately. My comment was around the potential. I just thought on page 20, and it's the last item on the vulnerable over 65, and it's really well covered on page 20, 33, 20 of the report, 36 of the agenda. It's well covered on page 23 under 4.412 about reaching out to the community, because not only did council ring everybody, Iwi and Hapa and their communities rang everybody, and out of Parliament secretaries who all had to work from home, they rang everybody over 65 as well. So I just wanted to make a comment about the potential overstating of vulnerable over 65s may have been missed on page 36 of the agenda, because I actually think you might want to say something about that, but surely they wouldn't be vulnerable over 65s, because if they were vulnerable, they would be MSD clients anyway, or they wouldn't survive. So my point is just probably about scripting And, I don't think many people were missed, but I can see there could have been some missed, but they wouldn't have been vulnerable ones because they had been being nurtured by the system somewhere. Otherwise, as I say, they couldn't survive. So can we just look at that phraseology, please?
Okay. Any more?
Otherwise, it's a great report. Thanks very much.
Last question, councillor Warstone.
Yeah, I agree. Fantastic report. I'm really glad that it's so candid. Like there's some stuff in there, people, you've actually been pretty brutal on yourselves, I think, in some cases. My question was around, because clearly this is involves a lot of networks into other organisations that are working alongside us. Do we have a good, has this been able to capture whether what we've got in here was their experience? Do they have access to this? We, it's good to do a self-review, but have we had a peer review, I guess? And just, sorry, one other point I'll just add it so you can answer it as well, was how are we managing going forward? Somewhere in here it says that we weren't completely sure about when or how we were going to be reimbursed for the costs that came out of this. And going forward, has that been resolved in a reasonably solid way?
I'll answer the first one and then I'll let Andrew answer the second part of that, give you time to think. So we made sure that our partners were interviewed by Richard as part of this report. So all of our key partners have fed into the report that's there. So we really wanted to hear their experiences working with us to make sure that, as you say, we weren't just either berating ourselves too much or pumping ourselves up either. So we have had our key partners input into it, and it will be discussed at the next key meeting around that review. Regarding the funding, it's been a slow process for all of us. I know it's something that NEMA are looking at around certainty of who's paying for what before anything is done, and looking at how we can clarify those rules around expenditure and reimbursement. We have still got a couple of small items outstanding at the moment with NEMA, but the bulk of the money has been paid through to us that was outstanding. But I don't know if you want to talk about the changes to funding at all.
Yeah, sort of two parts to it. The first part is there's an existing funding structure for emergencies, which is originally designed for non-pandemic events. So about flooding, earthquake, etc. And it's when people get evacuated, how we look after them. So covering their accommodation, food, etc. COVID's exactly opposite. It's actually keeping them at home, isolated, and so that wasn't as per the written direction covered. So the first part is sort of reviewing how that now is effective, and we've got a review of an actual plan to cover that coming up alongside of them. The second part is government decided that they would fund, and there were a few funds that were allocated. One of them was 30 million, which was used for the people, and it was food banks and those sort of things. But I wouldn't want to preempt what government might do next. They might do it again, but they might not. But that supported our EV responses, that supported our food banks, that supported so many things. That might happen again. But that's the sort of they say. We don't know what might be made. It's not actually a national regional agency decision. It's actually a government decision. So it's not coming from our team. It's coming from the Prime Minister and Cabinet, etc. for what they do. I can't predict what they might decide, but there's been a few things we've seen, and we're hoping that it'll be quicker next time to clarify everybody. Does that help at all?
It does. I guess what I would add to my question then is, how does that picture change what we would do next time? Are we more cautious around potentially what might be declined, or do we go healthily there and worry about the cost later? Like, how has our approach been affected by that experience?
Through your worship, there's definitely some thought before we spend any of the money. All through COVID, Andrew and I were talking around what was claimable, what was not, what the criteria was, how the criteria is functioning, so that we were confident that we would get reimbursed what we were spending. So the big part of it is coming out of the emergency, coming back to council and saying, are we actually able to pay for what we've bought at the same time? Because that would hit us as unbudgeted expenditure. And I would have to come and say, justify why we've done it as civil defence, which would something that's conscious in the back of my mind the whole time we're making calls about what we're spending and what we're doing, because we are still accountable for all of it. It's still public money, even in the emergency.
Councillor Burdett, and then a quick question from Councillor Dowson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great report, Ben. And I wanted to focus on Richard Mole. And if you go to page 21, second paragraph, purpose of this report is to record the thoughts and experience of those who were part of the emergency management response to COVID-19 in the Tairāwhiti district, with a view to identifying lessons learned and how these could be applied to be incorporated in future responses. His critiquing of all the interviews resulting in this report, I don't know what the others feel about it, is amazing, because there are lessons to be learnt out of it, but it also acknowledges the good work done by the team here from the top down. The issue of money and reimbursement was always going to be a problem anyway. However, I think from the whole experience, we don't want to have too many more COVID-19 lockdowns, but we've done extremely well. Our people have done extremely well out of it. It's me.
Thank you. Quick question, Councillor Dowsing, and then we're going to move on.
Thank you. And this is just in relation to last night's event. I just wanted to have just wanted to know. So there was a event at 2:30 in the morning. Waves would have struck here somewhere between 4 and 6 a.m. What's our alert system available, and what's our mobile coverage like in our tsunami areas on the East Coast?
Sure. So regarding last night, we get a phone call straight away from head office down in Wellington. So when GNS puts out the advisory, we get contacted as a seeding group. So we rang up, immediately checked and had a look. They got through to me, had a look at the height and made the call straight away to not send out an e-message because the heights weren't anything that looked worrying to any of us here. When it comes to the e-alert, it's one of the tools that we have. The other thing that happened is James Thompson immediately rang the community link up and down the coast and made sure that they were aware of what was going on as well. So for community link, if anything happens from there, they know they have their phone trees that they will then start contacting through, because we know we have patchy cell phone reception up and down the coast. So the messages go out to the radio stations, they go out to everybody. That's our way of getting coverage. But the e-alert's only one of the tools, particularly in our district, and it can't be the only one. It's why we always say, listen to the radio, check what's going on websites, because that's the only way to make sure that people can get those things.
Yeah, I guess at that time of the day, though, no one's listening to the radio or or the news. So.
I just, sorry if I may ask Mr. Hickey, just in terms of the WhatsApp report with Bacardi and the alert system that's been flagged there, would that have any implication going forward, thinking about tsunami warning, whether that you see that there's going to be any implications from the outcome of that?
So couldn't comment on the case that's still to come before the courts and what we've and what suggests anyhow. But going back to our original review, which was following the technical advisory group, the actual alerting was one of the things that came out of it. And so there was, it's not just for tsunamis, it's the wider context. So there is work being done. Cannot at this stage, because it's going to has to go to higher echelons to get sign off, etc. But the answer is yes, there will be there's work being done. The outcomes I can't bring at this stage. It will include everything from the tsunamis to the volcanic to the yes as well.
Yeah, it'd be good to look at a piece of work to understand where we have patchy reception areas within our tsunami zone specifically. We know that we can't get mobile across the entire district, but those tsunami areas, it is almost our first line of defence now in those early hours. So maybe a future piece of work.
For your worship, if I could just add some response to that. It's a part of really what I mentioned, this tapping into the resourcing and the funding we've got and filling our gaps. It's where the sort of things like satellite phones, in terms of we've got the ability to actually have technology and layer that in there. I mean, colleague Andrew here carries one himself, but for us, really, you get a cell network taken out, let alone your landline network. You've got your eyes and ears poked out. So.
Okay. One quick question.
Isn't that what you do as your community link people and they go door to door?
Yes.
And I mean, we actually, it does happen. I mean,
Yes.
I've been at a hoagie when someone has come door to door, and if it needed to be at 2:30 in the morning, you should make a judgment call, as you did this morning, about the size of the wave, the degree to which people need to be alerted at whatever time it is. So there are physical manual.
Absolutely, that's why we contact Community Link straight away, so that they can go and do those things where they need to. OR was really good for that, Te Araroa was really good for that. We actually did either the phone tree, knocking on the door, and in most flood events, Community Link are out there warning people to move stock, leave their houses once they've been given direction from us to move people. That's normally what will happen.
Thank you. This report, thank you, Ben, thank you, Andrew, thank you, David, Nadine, very thorough report, and we should be proud of the effort we made during COVID and how it was unknown and we just hit the ground running, and it was lots of organisations, but in the end it was civil defence that pulled it all together. So also thank you for your involvement there. I've got a mover in Councillor Wharehinga, seconder in Councillor Faulkner, all in favour, contrary, carried. So this is the end of our open meeting. So we will now move into public